introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is John Richardson, and we're sitting here right in the heart of Toronto Danforth. I've lived in this riding for over 25 years, and I'm running as an independent candidate in the election for October the 14th.
So what's your profession? Where are you working?
Well, I do a number of different things. I'm actually a lawyer by profession, although I've been out of the practice of law for a number of years. I also run a small seminar company. I do some self-publishing and some real estate management. So I'm a sort of a jack of all trades, master of none. I do everything, and I'm also running in this election.
Is it the first time you run for election?
No, actually it isn't. This has been a long-term interest of mine. I ran as an independent in the Ontario election in 1995. And because the municipal elections are by definition, at least supposedly, independent, I actually ran in Ward 29, which is Toronto Danforth, in 2006 in the municipal election.
I see. So what about federal? Is the first time you run?
This is the first time I've ever run federal, yes.
Provincial before municipal and now federal?
Federal, yes. I guess there's nothing left. Okay, after that, if I don't win on this, we'll go around again.
Okay. So what's the motive why you're running for federal this time?
Well, it's not so much the fact that it's federal, it's because I feel very, very strongly that as great a country as Canada is, democracy is in a perilous state of decline because so much of it seems to have been hijacked by the parties, their leaders. And what's happened is that we no longer have a democracy that represents the people in individual ridings. And I think that if people don't start coming forward to run as independents, I mean, we're going to be a democracy in name only.
So I think everybody knows that provincial election, federal election, they are party politics. Right? There are not many individuals that running this election be successful. Then what's your chances of winning?
My chances of winning?
Yeah.
Well, it depends what you mean by winning. My chances of getting the largest number of votes in this riding are, of course, I would say, a slim if next to nothing. That said, I view this as a much longer term project, and I want to encourage people to run as independents, and certainly I can't do that unless I get out and run myself. You know, most people, it seems to me, overestimate what they can do in 1 year and grossly underestimate what they can do in 10 years. My goal is independence on the ballot in every riding in this country, and I think that within some reasonable period of time you'll see that this will make a difference.
I'll see look at the federal election, I see three classes of different candidates, like the party candidates, the special interest group like some small national party like the marijuana, national so and so, and now you're talking about individual. So what's the future and how you see this election system? Because I know you're the law professionals right there. So
how do I see it in what sense?
The election, like the current election systems and also political environment.
Well, okay, I mean, I'll start answering the question. If I'm not answering what you're asking, you know, feel free to stop me.
Okay.
But what I see is a system that so grossly favors parties and party candidates that they have effectively monopolized the process. To use a visual image, it's though you have 3 or 4 or 5-year-olds playing in a sandbox and they won't allow anybody else to come in. You see this, of course, I mean, I understand that, you know, clearly different rules would apply to groups as would apply to individuals or perhaps small parties, but I mean, look at the financing, for example, that is so much more difficult for, say, independent candidates. It's tough to get on the ballot. You know, when I was you have to get 100 signatures. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot of signatures until you actually go out and try to do that. You know, it's interesting. I met, while I was out getting my 100 signatures, somebody else who's running in this election as well, and he was out trying to get his signatures, but he was running for a party at this point. He said, you know, I tried it as an independent. It was just too hard, too much bureaucracy, etc., etc., so I gave it up. And I think that sentiment has clearly been borne out by the very small number of independent candidates there are in this country. If you were to go to, say, there's a website on this, independentcandidates.ca. If you were to go there, you would be amazed at how few independents there are. I believe that at the end of the last Parliament there were 4 independents in the House of Commons, and I believe that each one of them either had started out as a party candidate, then perhaps been turfed out of caucus. For example, Bill Casey would be, I guess, the best known example of that. Or was running Andre Arthur in Quebec, of course, is running his own talk show. Very, very difficult to do this as an independent. But I got to tell you, I'm having a great time with it, and I think down the road it's going to make a tremendous difference.
Okay. So what kind of difference you make? You say you're making difference. Like, you know that the road for independent candidates is tough, right? So
the road for independent candidates is tough. Well, you know, once you get enough independent candidates on the ballot, what you're going to find is a situation where people are going to be taking independence seriously. And to take independence seriously is to believe that they have a say in the political process, that what they say matters, that in fact the candidates will be in fact responsive to their interests instead of the interests of the party. It's, you know, I foresee and hope for an evolution in the kind of democracy that we have in this country.
I see. So people see that the election is the platform, the time people can speaking out and be heard. All right. So I think you do successful certain ways that people know that you are the candidates. People start to listen to you. So the next way is that if you win, then you got to participate in MP. Right? Do you try to, like, I mean, so as I say, why did you consider, like, you join any party to make it easier for your political career?
Never. Never. You know, I have had experience with party candidates before in different capacities, and you know, what that experience has done is absolutely reinforced in my mind the necessity for there to be independence. You know, these party candidates don't even exist as individuals. They're simply there. When the party says jump, they say how high. When the party says think, they say what. When the party says vote, they say what way. I mean, I'm not saying they're not good people. Clearly they're good people and that sort of thing. But they really, I think, are useless as proponents of sort of a representative kind of democracy.
I see. I heard that in BC they say they have a party, non-partisan, something like that. A group of people, they join I think it's called non-partisan party, something like that. They don't belong to any major party, but they're a group of individuals get together. Do you ever consider, like, so what I heard from you, you're trying to push that more individual candidates come out for the election system, right? To voice out different opinions. Do you think about getting a coalition?
Getting them together? You know, it's funny. I actually thought of the name Coalition of Independent Candidates a number of years ago, and then about a year ago I saw that some group in Alberta had used that name and put it up. Yeah, I think the idea is a good one. The question is, how do you do it? What is the purpose? Okay, and how do you keep the groups and the individuals independent, but still sort of draw them together? Now, I do think there's a purpose, but I think that largely what it is a marketing purpose. I mean, a lot of people would love to do this, but they just don't know how. It's too hard. They don't have the time. So one of the things that one could do is have an association and the association would essentially be a commitment to a certain kind of representative democracy that doesn't exist today. They could share a common branding. It wouldn't make them a party. For example, you could get together signs that had a similar logo, and that would signify not a party, but simply an allegiance or a belief that the individual candidates do make a difference. And they could, take advantage of sort of a centralized marketing office, for example, or, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. The more money you have to spend, the more people you have, the less your costs go down, and the ability to share, say, a common person as an organizer or something like that. So to that extent, there's no question, but that is in the cards, and I think that would work. Now, how do you fuse that group of people in terms of a coherent policy? Well, that of course is a lot more difficult, so I don't think you worry about the policy particularly, because I think the real commitment that all politicians should have in any case is not a commitment to a particular policy, because how can one know for sure what the issues are going to be for you? Who could have foreseen the financial fallout, for example, that we're dealing with now?
Even Steve doesn't.
Of course not. I mean, even 30 days ago, if you were to ask these candidates, what their position was on something like that, you couldn't have foreseen it. They wouldn't have an answer. So what you really want are intelligent people with sound judgment. And so what an independent coalition would be I think one, okay, an agreement, two, independence of candidates, meaning that they are agreeing to use sound judgment, to not vote in a predetermined way, but to carefully weigh the factors and do what is best for the members of their riding and also for the country as a whole. And that seems to me to be precisely what it should be. I think that's a strength, not a weakness. Nobody can predict the exact questions that one would have to vote on, 1 year in advance, 2 years in advance, or even more absurdly, 4 years in advance. Go back 4 years. Didn't the world look tremendously differently from the way it does today?
When we look at, say, what I mean is some special interest party, like they have, like Green. I see Green is a special interest, like marijuana, something like that.
You mean the environment?
Environment. I mean, they have sometimes certain small party, they only have one vision or one policy. They follow. They're just as a federal party, right? So that in politics, people like you recover to the election system, so you want people who know your vision, share your vision, and supporting you. Right? So that's it. See, what's your vision?
What is the vision?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a vision of a democracy where, in fact, the elected public officials work for the people and not, in fact, for a party.
Okay. Okay. So.
And of course, you would vote for those people on the basis that you had confidence in their judgment. Now, sure. You want to ask, for example, there's a debate here tomorrow night, and people often ask me as an independent, what's your platform? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Independents don't have a platform because they're not a party. However, they are individuals who do have different views, different paradigms in terms of how they see the world. I mean, I could go through 5 or 6, areas about what I think about things in general. For example, if somebody asks me, well, what do you think, for example, about I mean, it's amazing. People actually say, what do you think about crime? Well, crime is a bad thing, clearly. Okay, what do you think about, obviously carbon is a problem, these sorts of things. But the question is, what sort of judgment do you bring to bear on the issues in terms of legislation? So I could say, for example, I think the Youth Canada Justice Act is ridiculous. I think what's even more ridiculous is, for example, this is just by way of example, of not revealing the identity of people. Everybody seems to be perfectly happy posting the name of somebody who's been arrested, not even convicted of an impaired driving charge on the internet, but somehow there's something wrong with saving the community from violent underage people. So an independent can say, well, I think this, I think that, but that is not even of itself a guarantee of how somebody would necessarily vote. At best, it's evidence or an expression of the confidence you have in their judgment.
You live in this area?
Yeah, for 25 years. 25 years. This is Toronto Danforth, and we're here at Timothy's, right here in the heart and soul of Toronto Danforth, at the corner of Jackman and Danforth.
Okay. Any demographics about this area?
Demographics?
Yes.
It is just so all over the place you wouldn't believe it. I learned even more about it just by going out to get the 100 signatures. I don't know what the statistics are, because I tend to see people as people and not as members of this group or that group. Certainly there is a very, very large immigrant component to this riding. People sometimes say, well, it's Greek town. I don't have a sense that there's more of any kind of nationality than another. There are tremendous disparities in wealth, a block from where we're sitting. Lots of money, expensive real estate. You can go up 4 blocks and you've got a lot of people of more modest means. It's heavily NDP at the moment. I almost feel like running as an independent in Toronto Danforth is sort of like going to Nebraska if you don't believe in capitalism for a Warren Buffett meeting or something like that. But it's highly diverse, and I think the fact that it's been heavily NDP is more just the people who do vote for NDP. It's, I don't think, in any way a real expression of the kind of people who live here.
So who is the incumbent?
Oh, the incumbent is Jack Layton.
So you're fighting against the NDP leader?
Well, sure. Well, actually, the truth is I'm not fighting against the NDP leader because Jack Layton's never around. I was on Goldhawk on Friday night for a debate, and Jack was most notable by his absence. So, if you want to think of yourself as fighting with Jack, you're fighting with a ghost, who's somebody who's never here. So I think it's much better just to ignore him.
So tomorrow, that would be the candidates' debate tomorrow?
There is, I understand, a candidates' debate tomorrow evening. And
Jack will be there?
Well, I don't know. I mean, why don't you call him up and ask him? I certainly hope he's going to be here, because, I mean, leaving aside the fact that I'm running as a long-term resident of this riding and one who cares about the riding very deeply, I would be greatly offended if he didn't show up.
I see. So I think for the past 3-4 weeks, that's not only one candidate debate. They have candidates debate before?
No.
That's the only one tomorrow.
Well, you know what, there may have been others, but one of the problems with running as an independent is you're not on everybody's radar. I'm actually not aware of any other ones. There was one that was supposed to be on, I believe, September 22nd or 23rd that was kind of canceled and rolled into this one that's going on tomorrow night. The only one that I'm aware of for sure was the Goldhawk thing on Friday, and I did participate in that. And I certainly will be there tomorrow night, whether Mr. Layton is there or not.
And you know that, like, Elizabeth May, the leader of the Green Party, try everything she can to get into the all leaders debate. But that they see that the media exposure is a major component of the election, election war. So how you get the attention of media?
How do you get
yourself exposed to media, promoted through media?
Well, I get help from you.
Thank you.
You know, or I get help from anybody else. It's a very, very difficult thing. And I think this is why people tend to not do this. I mean, it takes time. I'm not spending money on this because I think money is highly overrated for this type of stuff. But I mean, there's obviously an opportunity cost. It takes a lot of time and a certain commitment to doing it. But, you know, you do what you can. You respond to requests for interviews. That's all you can do.
So you say you're running a low budget, that means you don't have lawn-sign, website?
Well, I certainly have my website from when I ran municipally. I've sort of put together a very, very simple blog, votejohnrichardson.blogspot.com, which really is just one page, and it's just an attempt to explain why independent candidates are important. As far as low budget, my objective is to spend nothing. You know, and I'll tell you why. Okay, actually, it's not that I want to prove a point. It's that the bookkeeping rules are so extraordinary for candidates in federal elections that, and this is why, by the way, I do not want a donation from anybody either. Okay, because the accounting rules are so unbelievable that it takes more time dealing with this stuff than it's worth. And you have to have an official agent. It's hard to get an official agent because of the amount of work. So I had to promise my official agent that the amount of work would be practically minimal. So at the present time, as far as I know, we've only spent $10 for a bank account. And I'm disappointed that he couldn't have gotten that for free.
Ask the federal government. So.
Right.
Yeah, I say you lived here for 25 years.
Yes.
Yeah. So what have you done in this, I mean, for this riding, for this committee for 25 years?
What have I done for them? Probably nothing, although I spent an awful lot of money at the stores here. Nothing. I mean, I've been a concerned citizen. I've run a couple of times. I mean, I'm certainly willing to talk to anybody who wants to listen to me. But I have not been, I mean, in my own work, I do a lot of what I would call community service type of stuff, meaning a lot of free stuff, you know, speaking at universities and things like that. But I don't, for example, you know, do soccer night or something here, you know, the kids.
What about any volunteer works for this riding?
Any what?
Any volunteer works for this ride, particularly for this riding?
I think this is volunteer work. Having run 3 times is plenty volunteer work. You know, if nothing else, you expose people to, you know, to ideas and, you know, get them to think.
Yeah. Some people, they go out to run for election because they say they are not satisfied with the current government, or they have a vision or belief to want to achieve. You have got any vision?
What do I think of the current government? Is that your question?
That's correct, yeah.
I think that it's pretty good government. My concern is not with what they're doing so much as what I think a general lack of respect for the democratic process. The extent to which individual MPs have been sort of muzzled and silenced in this Harper government is on a level of nothing I've ever seen before. I mean, for example, Garth Turner's running this blog, you know, in the early days of the Harper government. You know, it it was an attempt to communicate with the constituents, which is a good thing. And of course, he was silenced and removed from the Conservative Party or resigned, whatever. Bill Casey, I think without a doubt the most important independent in Canada, you know, committed the cardinal sin of voting against the party because it was not in the interest of his riding, and of course he was turfed and continues to sit. And I mean, actually on today's Toronto Star, this is October 6, 2008, in today's Toronto Star there's a very interesting article about Mr. Casey. David Marler, another interesting story. Although he wasn't an elected MP, he was, and this is, by the way, one of the things that infuriates me and why I'm running, is the, well, leaving aside David Marler for a second, the tendency of the mainstream parties to come in and literally remove, not approve, candidates who have been democratically selected by local riding associations installing their own. For example, Mark Warner in Toronto Centre, Brent Barr in Guelph. These were two fine conservative candidates who had been democratically selected by local riding associations, who had been barred you know, from the party because of, you know, Party Central. And so the problem with the Harper government is not so much you know, what it does while it's doing the things that it should be doing, but the lack of respect that it has for the kind of democracy this country should have. And by the way, Michael Ignatieff, I mean, let's not restrict this to the Conservatives. You know, got his start as essentially he was installed in, what was it, Etobicoke Lakeshore, over the wishes of the local riding association. And this is something that's got to stop.
But you say lack of respect, that even Steve Harper calling this election is the reason respect other parties' consent wishes.
Well, there's no doubt.
Nobody wants the election except Conservative.
I'm sorry, what was what?
I think no other parties wants this election except Stephen Harper. Is that right?
I don't know, because you'd have to ask the other parties, but I think it's worth noting that one of the first things that the Conservatives did when they got into power was legislated fixed election dates, and the election date was supposed to be a year from now. Yeah. Now, I read a lot in the paper that he broke his own law. Now, I must confess, I didn't read exactly what the law said. I mean, it's one thing to say there have to be fixed elections every 4 years. I don't know that that means that you can't have an election at another time. That I don't know. But there's unquestionably, and this is a gigantic problem with the parties, a sense of opportunism. We have an election or we don't have an election because it benefits the party. And the Liberals their behavior is so offensive on this regard. I mean, you know, excuse the language, if Mr. Dion had any balls whatsoever, I mean, he would have called an election an awful lot earlier. What the Liberals have been doing is simply waiting until they either think they have a chance to win, or and this is for them. Okay, this is politics for the Liberal Party. Okay, this is not for the country. This is for the party. Yeah. Okay, and this is the type of thing that is so totally offensive. Government is not about the parties.
This is about the people.
That's right. That's right, and that's why you got to get independent candidates kind of revved up, get them on the ballot. You know, once there's enough of them, once you have a critical mass, people will start taking them seriously. And there's a lot of good talent in this country, you know, who'd be happy to get out and run.
But you know, sometimes say people, we go with the majority, but the fact in politics is that the minority party governs the country. If you look at like Liberal Party's membership, I think many years ago they only get about less than half a million, right? A party with less than half a million members, they control the 30 million countries. I don't know how many Conservative members has, but that's the true fact right there. So,
well, this is what happens if you do not participate. I mean, you know, it's interesting. If you look at Section 3 of the Charter of Rights, which was a great achievement of the Trudeau government. I mean, you know, I think all these governments have done good and bad things. But if you look at Section 3 of the Charter of Rights, what it says is that every Canadian not only has the right to vote, all right, but is eligible to sit in Parliament. And you know, everybody's always talking about rights, but you know, what you need to protect rights, I think, are equal responsibilities, and people, I think, have a responsibility to vote, and I think possibly, if they feel they're able to, you know, to get out and run and participate in this type of stuff.
Yeah. I think the system allows you to run, you know, as an individual. That choice is democratic. It's only like, I mean, the chances of the individual to get to winning. So.
Yeah, well, that is true right now, and that is because the people in this country and other countries have essentially allowed the kind of democracy that we have to evolve to that sort of thing. That does not mean it cannot be reversed. It can be reversed. I mean, if you look at the historical origins of the House of Commons, you didn't have these parties. What you had were MPs who were elected, okay, and they went out and they formed coalitions as necessary. And there's no reason, there's absolutely no constitutional reason whatsoever, if anybody ever took the time to look at the Constitution of the country, there's no constitutional reason whatsoever that requires this kind of party, party-dominated democracy.
I see. So in your opinion, like in the 300 something the MP sits in the Parliament, how many percentage should be like reasonable for the individual candidates?
How many should be independent?
Yeah.
All of them.
All of them. All independents.
Absolutely no.
So there's no parties.
Oh, there's no. This is an interesting thing. This idea of parties is something that came after the idea of Parliament. I mean, it became simply a way to organize, blocks of voting power and that sort of thing. I think that what you want would in fact be 308 live thinking minds with good judgment who would vote on the issues in a responsible way. Yeah. That's what you want. Now, I think it would be ridiculous. When people talk about Canadian politics, the first thing, of course, they do is talk about the United States. I'm not sure why. Okay, but one thing I would note is just an example of a different kind of democracy is that because you have a separation there between the president and Congress, okay, and because there's the members of different parties are in fact free to sort of vote their conscience, you tend to not get this kind of problem to the same degree. But I mean, my God, the concentration of power in the hands of the Prime Minister in this country is an intolerable amount of concentration. I mean, just to remind you of Lord Atkins' dictum, absolute power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. If you were to look at the Harper government, and this is nothing more than my personal opinion, but I think that, in 2004, I think that if you were to sort of put a synopsis on them, it would be principle over power. Now, after they've been the government, oh no, power over principle. This election is about they're trying to get a majority when they think they can.
You think they can?
Do I think they can? I'm going to guess they do not. I'm going to guess it's going to be a conservative minority, but I think the fallout from this election is going to be enormous. Unless the polls are dramatically wrong, I think it's probably the end of the Liberal Party as we understand it. My guess is that they're going to be absolutely decimated, and I think that they're probably going to have to completely dissolve and rebuild, meaning no reaching out to potential party leaders from the Richardson years or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I'm going to guess conservative minority.
What about this? How many seats Liberal will get for this election? What your guess? Plus, minus, or even right after NDP?
I don't know, but I was talking to somebody whose judgment that I respect a good deal a couple weeks ago, and he said to me, it's actually
those 56.
Well, that's what he thought. I don't have a strong view of that, but just in case you think this stuff is not impossible, I would remind you in 1993 the Conservatives went to 2.
Yeah.
So
I was in Canada.
You were in Canada at that time. That was rather extraordinary.
Yeah.
Majority government to 2 seats in one election. So
landslide defeat.
well, landslide in capital letters, bolded, something like that. I mean, it was the end of that party it was really the end of the party, wasn't it? Because then they were, sort of taken over by the reform, yeah.
And then back to conservative, yeah. So, but basically, same group of people.
Well, it is. It's interesting. What we have going on now in 2008 is similar to what was going on in the 1990s. Richardson would, proudly say, "I brought the Liberals to 3 majorities." Well, he never did. I mean, that was a circumstance. What happened was that the so-called right was so divided. I mean, you know, anybody with half a brain could have done that. What we have now is the reverse. Okay, now I wouldn't characterize politics as left or right, but because the conservatives are characterized as a right-wing party, their opposition is hopelessly divided. So, in a way, it's almost an embarrassment they can't get a majority. In a way.
So what's your viewpoint about the leader? I mean, the Liberal leader, Stephen Dion.
What's my opinion?
Yeah, what's your impression about him? Because all the polls like that say that he's not a great leader for...
Well, he, you know, he's clearly, well, first of all, let's look at what he is. He's clearly a very intelligent, I think, effective man, all right, in his capacity as a parliamentarian, you know, perhaps as, you know, head of a committee or something like that, but he's not a very, you know, I think it's fairly clear he's not a very inspiring leader. He's going down. You know, I don't see how in the world, I mean, given that it seems to me the primary purpose of the liberal powers, government is to stay in power, I couldn't imagine they're going to stay with him. But again, these are nothing more than my personal opinions. You know, who will be the next liberal leader? It's going to be somebody who you wouldn't expect today.
Okay.
I don't know who that'll be, but it seems to me they have to do a complete house cleaning.
What about your opinion about the NDP and Jack Layton? Although he's your opponent in this riding.
They're in a time warp. You know, I tend to agree with the Globe and Mail wrote an editorial saying the primary function of Jack Layton was to give make Stephen Harper Prime Minister. I think they're likely to be eclipsed by the Greens, if not this election, then by the next election. I mean, come on. I mean, anybody 2 weeks ago makes a pronouncement that, you know, Jack Layton is going to end poverty. You know, I don't know what took him so long to think of this. You know, the only thing, as far as I can see, watching the debates, that he's really capable of doing is taxing. You know, he just sees everything as an issue of redistributing income. Now, if he were really smart, I think it would be much, now given that all governments, okay, want to redistribute income and tax, I think that probably it would be much better for Mr. Layton to let these so-called evil businesses make a whole ton of money and then take it away from them. I think that's much better, okay, than taking it away from them before they're allowed to make a whole ton of money. So, I mean, that would be my advice for him. In other words, lay off.
So, what do you think about the future of small party, like anything Green or even some other like special interest party?
Well, I think the Greens have a very bright future. There is no question that the environment is the #1 substantive issue. We've been sitting here talking about democratic process and that. There is no question that the environment is the #1 issue. I'm a little surprised we're not talking about water, though. I mean, you know, everybody, you know, the carbon thing everybody knows about, although I don't know if they understand. The water thing nobody knows about, but everybody would understand. I mean, the next great war is probably going to be fought over water and not over oil or anything like that. And it would be a great mistake indeed to imagine that in this country, as fortunate as we are to live by the Great Lakes, that water is unlimited. And I certainly would add that to the catalog of issues. But I think the Greens have a bright future, and their candidates are good. You know, on sort of a one-to-one basis, I think they got good candidates.
So what are your election routines? Canvassing, knocking doors?
Oh, well, listen, I have to make a living, okay? You know, I mean, a lot.
Everybody has to make a living.
You know, yeah. I mean, you know, I'm not, you know, I mean, I'm not even putting any money in this. I was going to say nobody's bankrolling me. You know, that is true, but I'm not. You know, I have to go out and make money. You know, I talk to people when I can. You know, I think a lot of it was actually going out and, you know, getting those 100, actually I got 160 signatures, an awful lot of time talking to people. I participate in anything that I can, you know, this sort of thing. And, but as I say, make no mistake, I'm saying this is a long-term project. Sure, if somebody wants to elect me, I'd be happy to, you know, to go up there to Ottawa and do my best. But realistically, I don't think that's going to happen. This year.
So what were your results for the last 2 elections? The provincial elections, how many votes you get? Municipal, yeah.
You can look it up. I don't remember. It wasn't very many. But I didn't do a lot of campaigning or anything either.
So this time you do more campaigning, you do more...
No, this time, you know what, this time I feel, I've always felt strongly about what I do, but I feel extremely strongly about the importance of independence in the political process. And I'm not at all focused on winning. What I'm focused on is trying to hopefully inspire other people to do this. So, you know, I'm sure I'm interested in, you know, talking to anybody who wants to talk. I mean, usually their question is, what's your platform, okay? And, you know, the answer is a simple one, sound judgment, you know, and do the best you can. But I don't find, it's interesting, there's a tremendous amount of frustration. People don't like politicians, they don't like what's going on, but they're not generally able to put their finger on why.
Maybe they don't share the party's, like, vision, policies, or
well,
they don't like the leaders.
Well, I think it's all of the above, depending on the person. But I think what it really is a sense that it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what I do, and I do agree with that. You know, that's the end result of this kind of party democracy that we have. I think you could get them awfully excited about it, you know, if they had a sense that what they thought might make a difference.
You say you want to inspire more people to run for individuals.
As independents, yes.
As independents, right? Independents. What's the return? You know, when we do something, sometimes people look at return.
To me personally?
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing is tremendously exciting to me. It's my vision of, you know, the kind of democracy that, I mean, there's certainly, if you mean monetary, there's certainly none. It's
about the fame, reputation.
No, not at all. Listen, you know, I'll tell you something. Ronald Reagan, one of the greatest, well, of all time. I mean, you may not like his policies, but one of the greatest. You know, he used to say, you know, we can accomplish anything if we don't care who gets the credit. And, you know, my feeling is that if next time, if in a small way, I can contribute to there being 10 independent candidates in the Toronto area, he shared this vision, then the whole thing would have absolutely been proven to have been worth it. But even if I don't get that, it's worth it.
We are the internet TV. It's going to be seen in all across Canada.
Wonderful.
So you want to make a like 1 million appeal to inspire more people to come out to run for independent?
Well, listen, if you've sat through this long, I think you must have some interest in this, okay? Go to, there's a website, independentcandidates.ca, check it out. If you want to, call me up personally. I'll do anything I can to help you, whether it's by way of inspiration or logistical things, you know, help you get on the ballot. I think that you're doing something that's awfully important for the future of the country. So, you know, I mean, I think we pretty much covered the stuff, and I really appreciate the opportunity to answer these questions and share these views.
Last 2 questions. Okay, what's your chances of winning this time?
Oh, 0.
Okay.
Well, you mean the election? This election?
This election,
oh, I'm not going to win this election, but what I will win, if I can get a few people in joining me next time, which is the answer to your second question. Yes, of course, I'll do it again.
So you will run again? And the next provincial?
The next provincial. I'm 90% sure I'll run in the next federal. Okay, possibly the next provincial. It depends on, you know, on how I want to focus this. I mean, so I think I can at the moment commit to I'm in this for the next federal election. Okay, at least in terms of how I'm feeling now. But what I'm trying to do is motivate people to get out and do this. Now, if anybody's watching, thinking about municipal elections, by definition, those are for independent candidates. Even though, of course, you know, a number of the parties try to get in and corrupt the process. You don't need the 100 signatures. Running municipally is unbelievably easy. All you have to do is write a check for $100 or $200. To do this, you need to write a check for, actually, that's an interesting thing. You have to write a check for $1,000. It doesn't hurt me particularly, but it does occur to me there are people who might be kept out for that reason.
I see. We think about a little bit about history. Say, in the early 90s, like you say that, I mean, the Liberal takes over, the Conservative become a government in 1993. At that time, there was also economic downturn. The same thing happened in Ontario. The Conservative took over the NDP in 1995. This is because people lose jobs, you know, unemployment rate. So that means what I see is that politics and economy they have a like close relationship. When you look at the economic downturn right now, the financial fiasco, so that according to what you say, the Conservatives get the minority government, the economy going down to next year, then people get unemployment, economy down. Will there be another election?
Well, you know, I think there very well could be. I think there's 2 points that need to be made here. One of them is that we live in a culture of blame. Okay, anything bad that happens, it's just got to be somebody's fault, right? It's got to be somebody's fault. And so, you know, who better to blame than the government? I mean, I think it is absolutely ridiculous to imagine that the economic downturn is, you know, if you look at the U.S. election, I mean, this is clearly hurting McCain because he's a Republican. I mean, it is crazy to imagine this has anything to do with the Bush administration. What this has to do with is, my God, individuals who overextended themselves. Okay, that's not the government, okay? If you want to blame, you put the blame right where it should be, on yourself, if you're one of those people. But there is no question. I mean, if you look at, I mean, everywhere, you know, when economic times get tough, okay, people want to change governments. And that is probably the thing that has the biggest chance of bringing the Conservatives down. It's not going to bring them down now, only because the opposition is so incredibly weak. But, you know, with a rebuilt Liberal Party, with the NDP sort of relegated to the ash heap of history, and the emergence of,
next year.
well, maybe not next year, but, you know, the Conservatives will be brought down. There's no question about that. But they're all going to be brought down, you know, at some point. It's a cyclical thing.
Okay. Thank you. It's nice talking to you. Okay.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right.